Toronto real estate sales are down by almost 40% year over year, and that is leading many to suggest that the tides are turning towards a buyer's market. But is it really becoming more advantageous for a buyer, especially considering the higher interest costs associated with purchasing a property in today's market? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in today's video. But before we do, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and please hit that like button so more people like you can see this video. And don't forget about our Race to 25,000 giveaway, where we are giving away $5,000 to one lucky winner. To enter that draw, all you have to do is go to 360giveaway.ca and be subscribed to this channel, and you get an extra entry if you follow me on Instagram and if you share the contest socially. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's discuss the Toronto real estate market and what's happening there. I want to jump you in first and foremost to the headline. Toronto home prices fall as sales take another hit in May. And I wanted to also point out the very first line here. The tide continued to shift in favor of home buyers in the Greater Toronto Area last month amid higher borrowing rates. So this is a really interesting headline, and this is a really interesting topic of conversation here, because is the favor really returning to the buyers? Well, yes, from a purchasing standpoint, absolutely. But from a cost standpoint, maybe not so much, because what you'll see here in a little bit is home prices have gone down by about 3% in the Toronto area, which is a pretty considerable amount for them to drop in a 2 or 3 month period. But you also have to keep in mind that interest rates have gone up by almost 2% on 5-year fixed rate mortgages and are continuing to go up on variable rate mortgages, which means with the 2% increase in interest rates, that's about a 20% increase in borrowing costs. So while you're getting a 3% reduction in the price of the home, you're going to pay significantly more in interest costs, which means it's probably not necessarily in the buyer's favor right now to purchase a property. But the other thing you have to consider if you're a buyer is if interest rates do continue to go up and they go up by another 1% or another 2%, and you're waiting for that drop in the market, well, you could very much find yourself in a position where you might see a 5 or 7% drop in the market, but you may end up paying 1 or 2% more on your interest rate, which could lead you to paying basically 10 to 20% more for the house by virtue of the fact that you're going to pay a higher interest rate. So the question that we always get asked is, when is the right time to get into the market? And a lot of people, and what the Treb people are suggesting right now in this article here, is that many people are waiting for the market to bottom. And that may not be the best strategy, because it may not go down as much as you expect it to, and you may end up missing out on lower interest rates. So there's this really interesting decision that needs to be made here. And for the most part, what I need to tell people and what you need to understand is that the best time for you to get into the market is when you are ready to get into the market. And if you are going to purchase a property for the long term, the best time to do it is when you're ready to do that. Because at the end of the day, 25 years from now, we've said this before on the channel, the increases in prices and the dip in prices that are coming, even the 2007-2008 financial crisis, are just blips on the radar if you're looking at it from the long term. And if you're buying a house to live in it, that's the way you should be looking at it. It is a long-term decision, not a short-term decision. And if you're making long-term decisions, then the exact point where you get into the market is probably not very important. What is important is that you get into the market when you have that opportunity. Now, many people are going to suggest that I'm saying this because I want to sell mortgages and I want to have people sell real estate. And the reality of it is that is not the case. The case is that we are simply looking at the fact that interest rates are going to continue to go up, and people are going to have a little bit of a lock-in effect on the properties that they purchased in the last little while, and they're probably not going to sell them for substantially less than what they bought them for. So in other words, you're probably not going to see a massive decline in home prices relative to the amount that interest rates are going to go up. So you want to be getting into the market when you have the opportunity to get the lowest interest rates. Now, turning to the residential real estate stats for the Toronto real estate market, this is where the market gets really interesting. There is a lot going on here and a lot to unpack. So we're going to start first and foremost with total residential transactions. Year over year, they're down almost 40%, 38.8 to be exact. So 7,000 homes sold in May of 2022 compared to almost 12,000 in May of 2021. And this is largely due to the fact that interest rates are rising, and they're rising at a fast pace. We're seeing a lot of buyer fatigue, and we are seeing basically now the people that want to be in the market are the people who need to be in the market because they have a life change, they need a bigger house, their commute is too long, or they're simply just in a needs position rather than a wants position. The wants buyers have seemed to disappear, and that's probably a good thing overall for the market because it does create a scenario where you don't have to get into those competing offers anymore, and you don't have to get into those scenarios where you're basically competing on price and trying to write an offer that is substantially higher than what the value of the property is. Now, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with all the homebuyer bill of rights and all the things that were put in place to end blind bidding and everything like that, because now it's seemingly becoming less and less of a problem. Now, with respect to the seasonally adjusted numbers compared to April, we have about 600 less sales, or about 10% less sales, 9.3. And, that is to be expected. As we see interest rates go up, we're probably going to see some normalization in the market. And I'll show you the normalization numbers in a second to show you where we are compared to where we've been in the past. Now, the average selling price is obviously up significantly over last year. This is due to that time period between basically May of 2021 and March of 2022, where we were continuing to see home prices rise. But compared to April of 2022, we're seeing home prices down about 3.1%. So about $35,000 to $40,000 on a seasonally adjusted basis. Now, here's where it gets really interesting, because what we're seeing is that new listings have not come down. We're seeing the same amount of listings this year as we were compared to last year, which means there's more inventory on the market, which means there's more opportunity to purchase, which means those things like condition-free offers should be going away in the GTA area. Now, the sales to new listing ratio, this is the numbers that we look at with respect to how fast properties are selling. We're down to 39%, which means we're entering more of a normal market, not necessarily a buyer's market yet. But what the sales to new listing ratio is this is the ratio of sales compared to the number of listings. And when this number gets really, really high, so like if 100% of the new listings are being sold, that means we're in a really crazy market. By the way, we've never really gotten there. But if only 39 to 40% of them are being sold, then we're getting more into a normal market. And what that means is we basically got 2 to 3 months of supply, which means that's how long it would take if there were no new listings listed for all the properties in the market to sell. Now, property days on market, we're increasing here. Last month, we weren't quite to the point where we were increasing yet, but we're up to about 18 days if you're looking to sell your house. And that's still a pretty reasonable amount of time to sell your house. So if you're putting your house on the market, you can kind of rest assured that if it's priced right, you're going to sell it in a pretty reasonable amount of time. Now, this is where we get into those seasonally adjusted sales figures. As you can see, this is sort of the normal that's been happening going back to 2018. If you drew a trend line there, it would probably be right in that 7,000 range. What you can see is we're just kind of coming back below that. So pretty average sales amounts. We aren't into a market yet where we're seeing significantly lower sales than we've seen in the past. Now, as interest rates go up, could this number start to come down? Absolutely. You can see that the lowest number that we've had is from March of 2020, but only time will tell with respect to how these interest rate changes play out. Now, the home price index, obviously that is still rising. It's going to come down a little bit. It's probably going to flatten out, look a lot more like 2012 to 2016. What I find really interesting is when we start getting into the condominium sales stats. So condominium sales are faring better than the rest of the GTA market. And that's pretty much an indication that people are moving back to those downtown areas. Obviously, the selling price is up just like it was in the other markets. But the total new listings is pretty flat. The sales to new listing ratio, though, this is where it's really interesting. This is down 14%, but 69% of new listings in the condo market in Toronto are still selling. So what that tells us is that we've got a lot hotter market in the condo market than we do in the overall market. And my guess, just based on the condo numbers versus the total numbers, is that outlying areas in the Toronto area are getting beat up pretty bad. I'll link in the description below here to a really great YouTuber in the outlying areas of the GTA who does really good stats on those outlying areas, so you can take a look at what's going on there. And then days on market, we're down to 12 days for condominiums. Now, this is in contrast to last year, where last year we were at 23 days on market for condominiums in the GTA. Now we're down to 12. So again, what that is telling us is we're seeing this move back towards lower priced properties, which are condos, and also towards the more denser areas of the GTA. So really interesting things happening there. And by the way, if you are looking at renting prices have gone up pretty substantially over the last year. There is less listings available for those rental properties. And the reason for this is because simply people are sitting on the fence waiting to get into the market from a purchasing standpoint, or they aren't able to get into the market because of a cost factor. So really interesting thing here, if you have the opportunity to flip from being a renter to being an owner, it usually makes sense. And these rents just continue to go up as properties get more and more expensive, and carrying costs, things like interest rates, get more expensive. So lots to unpack here, lots going on in the Toronto real estate market. Obviously, prices aren't falling through the floor, and they probably won't, again, because that Toronto market has a pretty low amount of supply compared to the number of people that live there. You have to consider Toronto an international market, so something similar to Hong Kong or Sydney or Vancouver or Manhattan or London. It's no longer just a local destination, which is why we see high demand in that market, and we will likely see continued high prices until there are significantly more homes built in that market. And by the way, if you look at markets like the Hong Kong market or the Manhattan market or the London market, often when they establish themselves as international markets, they never come back to the average values that are expected in their respective countries. So think of it this way, you're probably going to see housing prices remain high in Toronto for a very, very long time. And the next 3 to 6 months, especially if you can still lock in a lower interest rate, are probably going to be a pretty good buying opportunity from a long-term perspective, especially if you're planning on living in that property for an extended period of time. Now, I could be wrong on that, but that's just my gut feeling, as Toronto and Vancouver are their own markets now, and we're going to see them continue to stay flat or continue to rise in prices as more and more people have high demand for Canadian real estate. So if you found this video useful, do me that favor, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, please hit that like button so more people like you can see this video. Don't forget about that race to 25,000 subscribers, and we'll see you on the very next one. Cheers.